Hey, I'm Hunt, and this is Hunt on LSU, your channel for LSU Fighting Tiger football talk. Enjoy the video. We want you to leave a comment below, hit that like button, and subscribe right below the video. Enjoy.
Even though Hunt's not here, we'll still visit with Preston Guy in his normal spot here on a Friday. Of course, covers LSU football and recruiting over at tigerbait.com. He is on Twitter at pguy77. Preston, we appreciate the time. How are you?
Hey, Matt, what's going on? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. We're just making it through a Friday, trying to get ourselves to a long weekend. Let's dive into LSU, and I did want to get your thoughts. I know we were kind of texting earlier about a potential change coming to signing day, but let's start with LSU football. Brian Kelly has been making the rounds with a lot of sit-down interviews around whether it was with Michael Cobbler, Jacques Doucet. He recently did one with Scott Rabelais and mentioned that they were done at defensive tackle, but still in the portal at other positions. What positions might that be? Where should our eyes be focused there?
I'll tell you what, the Trey Holly situation got a lot more complicated as the judge presiding over his case recused himself for some sort of personal connection. So that case is now going to be in lingo a lot longer. It's been delayed. So it sounds like, okay, well, they can reinstate him while this legal process is going on, but that would be, I don't know if it's completely unprecedented, but I cannot remember a circumstance where a football player was reinstated under that circumstance. So running back definitely could be a spot to look at. And then punter actually could be a spot. Peyton Todd has not provided the consistency that they really are looking for. He has a booming leg, but they really need him to be just on point. He has a few too many shanks and whatnot, and they really want him to be his best self. So they might look for a punter to bring in and at least push him for that starting spot. Outside of that, I believe they have right now, after JVR Suggs, they have 3 more spots open, and I think it would be best available outside of that. So you can add to your roster.
It's interesting you bring up punter and special teams because obviously Brian Kelly, he went on the record with their kind of, for a lack of a better term, displeasure with Peyton Todd so far in the lack of consistency. Special teams has been under the microscope easily in the first 2 years of Brian Kelly's tenure and going into year 3. What do you kind of make of that unit overall? Because it's been oddly quiet around that except for the Peyton Todd talk.
Yeah, a bit of that is Damian Ramos is just quiet and consistent, not really anything special with his leg strength or anything, but he's going to be your, 75, 80% kicker, and he's going to make the kicks you need, and that's kind of a good thing. They're set at long snapper with Slade Roy there, and, it's one of those things, a lot of these problems on special teams, if you're not talking about them, it's because you're in a good spot. But then you're talking about your real issues in special teams have been, blocking because, you had kicks blocked. You lost your very first game under Brian Kelly against Florida State because of that. Well, your offensive line is now considered one of the best in the country, and that should be ironed out pretty quickly. That's an easy thing to iron out. So I don't think we'll be seeing anymore, but it's really been returner because it's either been bad or nothing special for LSU in the return game. Well, you bring in Xavion Thomas. You thought you had your issue addressed with Aaron Anderson. Lo and behold, the very first game against Florida State, he muffs the ball, and they yanked him. They said, we're not doing this again. We're not losing football games because we're muffing punts. We're going to send, Greg Clayton back there and give us a fair catch. Well, Greg Clayton's gone, so you're going to have to find a new person to go do that. And I think Xavion Thomas should be a pretty good answer. Because unlike Aaron Anderson, he's actually done this at the collegiate level and been a good returner. So the hope is at that spot you're going to go from it being a liability to it being a strength of your team.
Preston, I'm curious on something else too, because when we were just kind of talking about numbers there and where else they might look in the portal, you said they have 3 spots left and best available. Do you look at this LSU team now after they've added JVR Suggs and the numbers are good along the defensive line and defensive tackle spot? Do you look at this LSU team kind of without now a big glaring remaining hole, or is there one that you see as their biggest remaining hole?
Matt, the fact of the matter is that for this defense to be a unit that allows them to make the college football playoff, players who weren't playing well last year are going to have to play well. There's no other way to slice it or dice it, because you look at these, your defensive tackle depth, and you have enough bodies there. You bringing in a 5-star defensive tackle freshman. You have Jacoby and Guillory. At defensive end, you have a lot of returning guys, but none of those guys played good football last year. You're going to be looking for a guy like Womack to step up. You're going to be looking for Savion Jones to play with much more exterior discipline. And that's why you revamped your coaching staff. So for this defense to be anywhere near good enough what it needs to be, yeah, you're going to have to get something more out of these guys you weren't getting, because the transfer portal did not come through and rescue your defense. You added some nice pieces. You added Jordan Gilbert. You added J.R. Brown. It's not a completely new defense we're talking about personnel-wise. So guys going to have to start playing better, and I still have concerns about that defensive line as a unit. I'm still pretty worried about it, because it's kind of like your offensive line on offense. It's kind of the foundation of your defense. That's your first point of attack. If they're getting pressure, it helps everybody. If they're not getting pressure, if they're eating up blocks in the run game, that frees up your linebackers. So I have my concerns with it. That being said, I do expect the offense is going to be pretty darn good. There's a lot of room in between pretty darn good and where they were a year ago. That's still good enough to get you in the playoff. The problem is that defense, you got to improve from the hundreds to the 60s to get there. You got to be at least an adequate defense. You know what I mean?
For sure, 100%. I think you could argue in Brian Kelly's first year they were an adequate defense. I don't think if you go back and look at ranks and everything like that, they weren't world beaters, but they were adequate, and it got them to the SEC championship. If you're that this year, well, maybe you can, run 10-2 and get to the college football playoff. You just can't be what you were last year. We're talking with Preston Guy here, covers LSU football and recruiting for TigerBait.com. You follow him on Twitter at PGuy77. Preston, I did want to get a thought on the potential for a change to the recruiting calendar that could be pretty big. So Football Scoop earlier this week had a report, and it's not something that's new, but it's moving signing days around, moving the December signing period up to the first week of December to kind of get it out of the way of the college football playoff and things of that nature. And I think that makes a little bit of sense. The thing that is kind of catching people off guard is the potential for a June signing period. It would potentially go into effect first for the class of 2026, which would be June 2025. Why are they pushing for a June signing period over the traditional February?
Well, because first off, Musso, let me just say the signing period situation. I was one of the early adopters saying, hey, give me an early signing period, because we saw problems with the February one in that early enrollees weren't locked in. So guys could just, leave you at the altar and enroll somewhere else like Gunnar Kiel did to LSU. Mm-hmm. That was a problem. So I was like, oh, yeah, just give an early signing day. The problem that they've created with this December signing day is 10 times as bad as that problem, because now instead of having a recruit bail on their school they're committed to, you're having teams, rosters, coaches, like not a player, basically an entire team bail on their school in the middle of a season. Bowl season has been just eviscerated. And that was probably something that was coming on anyways, because we've seen players taking meaningless exhibition games less seriously over the last 10 years. Look at the NBA All-Star Game. Look at the Pro Bowl. That's a bit of a cultural shift, but now everybody's watching out for themselves, and coaches need to get in their job in November, not December anymore, November, to get a roster built. Well, all of a sudden, if you backed it up to December 1st, you're gonna have to hire coaches even earlier. So I guess, to get that signing place in order, they're going to have to abandon their regular season as well. So I'm not nuts about this, but let me tell you about the June signing day. It would at least have a core nucleus of your recruiting class locked in before the season starts, before you fired and hired coaches. And I do think that would relieve some of the pressure of getting a coach in place for if you have 12 kids committed instead of 0, because 0 were locked in, it kind of, I guess in theory, could help that. The thing that just scares me, Musso, with all this is all the changes we've seen with college football where on paper it sounds good for the kids and great, good for them. It's the unintended consequences of all these things that are changing, and I just, this is coinciding with a lot of other changes, like revenue sharing is now going to be a thing. The portal still hasn't been figured out. It's a mess, but I'll tell you what, it's about as bad as it could be right now, and it's bad for the sport. It's unsustainable long-term for the sport. So to change it in any way, my gut tells me it can't be worse.
It looks like it's coming down the pike pretty fast. I mean, and coaches and media and everyone alike is kind of looking at it like, ugh, all right, well, we'll see how it goes. But you're right. I mean, it's just the next step probably in the what's the buzzword? The ever-changing landscape of college football and college athletics. So we will see. But I did want to get thoughts on it because it's a pretty interesting topic. I find that just the next thing to change is recruiting, right? But Preston Guy covers LSU football for Tiger Bait and recruiting as well. Y'all can follow him on Twitter at PGuy77. He's here with Hunt every Friday. Preston, we appreciate the time as always. Thank you.
All right, Matt. See you soon.
Hey, thanks for watching Hunt on LSU. Before you get out of here, do us a couple of favors. Hit that like button, leave your comments below, and subscribe to the channel for all your Fighting Tiger football talk. See you next time.